Good morning, this is Brian Whitman and ET Art, and yes, I'm back again making yet another video. And I said I wasn't going to be here to do so, but there was some other points I needed to bring out, and I wanted to put this up. It's mostly about planetary movement, but I thought we might look at a few rocks as well at the end, for those that are interested in what is on the rocks. I actually wanted to start this because this is actually on my YouTube channel, on the ET Art homepage, and I actually wanted to start with that today because I've always had this as my page, just to the right of where this black dot is. You see this here? Can you see anything there? Because that's actually why I put that there. I put that there and thought, well, I'll put that there and just see if anybody's observant. You know, I mean, that's actually what you've got to do when you're looking at these rocks. As I showed you in the last one, you can sometimes see a face looking in a direction. Other times you'll have black marks like this that you bring to your attention. You see what you're seeing here? There and there? There's two blokes sitting down having lunch. That bloke there's got a cup of coffee, his knees bent, he's sitting down, that's his boot, that's his other boot. This is this guy's lunchbox, sitting on the ground in there. He's sitting back, his cup of coffee's there. That's his head and that's his head. There's two people sitting down there. The reason they're there, sitting down having lunch, I would expect that they've actually helped build this wall over here, which is why we see, you know, that image come up to the right of that. So I just thought I'd start with that. The other mistake I wanted to fix up that I said in the last video, I said that in this cycle here, which are the ones that move the planet both from the inner to the outer ring, are these cycles here. And I said that this cycle here, at the start of here, is like the middle of that cycle there. And I also said us coming up here and finishing our cycle was the same as being here. That's actually incorrect. The first part wasn't. Right? So in other words, when we're laying flat there, it effectively, from the point of view of the Earth's cycle around the Sun, is the same as being there. Right? But what the same as being there is in actual fact for the entire cycle. Both those entire cycles lay flat the whole time, and they cause the same issue as the very centre of the cycle that we've just finished. So when the situation was then, if we went back to 3,000 years ago in these cycles, when you get to the bottom of this cycle, your axis is at 24 degrees still, but when you're going around the bottom of the and top, you know, around the Sun, you are getting 3 months full sun on either pole, depending on whether you're at the top or the bottom, or you're getting 3 months full dark and winter. But because the Sun is top and bottom, the period or the place and location on the globe that you can exist on here, like I said, that their own count was that 3 billion people went on here, and only 1.5 come out the other end of that. And that is just 1,000 years of that situation. This is 6,000 years of exactly that situation. That model with the planet laying down is identical to that in the middle, but it is only there for 1,000 years. In this one, coming up here and coming up here, or going away as these do, they look very similar to what we are now. You know, your first 1,000 years here, you're gradually leaving the plane of the Sun. The last 1,000 years you're gradually coming back up. So they in actual fact look very, very similar in this area as what we actually have at the moment. But like I said, in the middle there, it is absolutely hell. And that entire sequence, at the end of a 24,000 run, on plane with the Sun, that one there is the one that moves us out or into the other ring. I've brought us back to the Tirumali giant complex in India, in central India, just to have a look at the device that's stuck on the wall there. And we spoke of these 4 cycles, and this was the one that hadn't completed. I know I'm a little bit far out for you to see, but there are switches here, and this is the completed or incomplete cycle that we're on. And when I said we are seeing the shifting of the planet into inner and outer rings of rotation, in that when these cycles are finished, this cycle here is the one we're on, which I will go to the parchment in a minute and show you that. This cycle here is the one we're finishing. It gets switched through. Once we're finished, we are then come up to the plane of the sun. This is the plane of the sun, and these little crisscrosses on it, albeit I know they're not real clear in that image. In actual fact, the installation of Atlantis. And what I wanted to, realise here, that if we were looking at a situation here, we see Atlantis installed here. We see it installed there, there, and there. This is inner and outer rings. If it's inner and outer rings, it's telling us it's also possibly in an outer ring. And I'm just beginning to think, I'll show you a couple of other the Egyptian reliefs that I question as to why they are the way they are, but I wanted to come back here to let you know that in actual fact we're finishing this cycle, right? Which means that cycle being completed, the next cycle, because we're on plane with the sun here, we're coming up to the plane of the sun. We have a 24-degree tilt on the axis. We know that any of these cycles here that transcend between the inner and outer ring, those two cycles there that move us back in and out, the Earth is laid flat. So we know we're not like that. We would know very well if we were rotating around the sun in that direction. So we know we're not on the cycle that brings us in, or we know we're not on the cycle that brings us out. So therefore we can only be on possibly two other cycles. We're finishing the one in the middle that's going to rotate the world around the sun in a different direction. So in other words, the Earth, this movement in the centre, the other movement that does not take you in or out, the only thing it does, it changes the direction of the Earth's rotation around the sun. I want you then to understand that that's our sequence. So we've got, in this instance, when we started off, if in actual fact the plate that I'll insert now, this image of this plate and the swirly figures on it, I'll insert one figure now, and then the next one, and when you look at them it's obvious one is rotating left and one is rotating right. And the only thing that does that is the Earth, when it rotates and changes the way it spins, in other words the direction it spins, it doesn't actually physically change it. When these movements take place and it is shifted from inner to outer ring and laid flat like that, so in other words the thing that knocks it over, the impact that knocks it over like that, and when they bring it back up, they just bring it back up like that. It still spins in the same direction, but that's how you get the Earth rotating on the plane in an opposite direction, okay, without actually physically changing the globe's rotation direction. But what I wanted to do is then say, okay, so we've got a knock downwards, a knock upwards, a knock downwards, a knock upwards. So each upward knock, which is when I'll show you when I say a knock upward, you've got to understand that what you're seeing between one of these and the movement out, when they lay the planet over, it moves out on its own. So if I come back to these cycles now and understand that that's what we're seeing. We're seeing a situation where we're going along on a plane. We then, the plane, we're knocked off the plane, and the plane is moved so that it rotates initially in a downward direction, okay? The ones that move us out and into the other rings are initialized by an upwards direction. When I say they're an upwards direction, they show the plane of the planet as having initiated in an upwards manner to get both those inner and outer ring movements happen. I'm not shown anywhere, and this is where I put a question to planetary scientists. I am under the impression that when they tilt the globe this way and lay it flat, that what we see is an expanding plane. So in other words, the reason they lay it flat and cycle it like that for 6,000 years and we've discussed it, it goes out to that other rim and they have to come back and lift it up. I'm under the impression that when these start and it lays flat, depending on whether it lays flat with the North Pole pointing outwards, like from away from the sun, that type of thing. So if our North Pole points that way, that the spiral of the planet just takes it further away from the sun, and the plane eventually expands. That's what I'm thinking we are seeing. I'll show you the other image, might be easy to explain it. Now I've just brought the rock back up now. I know that might sound like a silly thing to do, but we've had a lot of things happen off this rock. What I did say at one point was I wanted the Prime Minister to go down here and have a look to see if we had another Uniguni monument underneath the water in the Great Australian Bight. This is the Great Australian Bight here in Port Augusta. We've gone through this in other videos. I don't really want to rehash. I do encourage you to go back and look at my other videos so that this makes sense. But we've had lines disappearing off this part of the rock. It's been a rather peculiar thing to have to go through. This one here is not, you know, I'll insert an image here. That was not that big. That's a big square, you know. It's hard for you to see, but that's in actual fact like a really square object that's made there. And I wanted to show you that because I'm going to try and make it go away. And I know that sounds bloody stupid, but it's been happening. Every time I've come to a conclusion and worked out why, there's still something they wanted me to show you, which is why I came back to make this video. And I'll show you what I think it is. I guess the best way, it's difficult for me to explain to you what they say they do, okay? This is the message I'm reading in the message they've wrapped here for us to understand how our planet moves on these unnatural cycles. I've laid the Earth over on its side using the North Pole heading towards my left. The sun in my room is coming through this window over here. I want you to imagine that that's in actual fact where the sun is. Okay, the Earth is still rotating and always does in this direction, so we're going rotating this way the way we always do. Yes, clockwise. It's difficult sometimes when you do this to tip things sideways and remember where you are and how things are spinning. But if you can imagine the sun rising over there, okay, now our Earth is still spinning this way and we still travel around the globe on the plane, so we're going around this way and the plane moves like that. So if the plane's moving up over the top of the sun, this is how we stay like this on one of those cycles for the entire period of time, going up and over the top of the sun and around in a year like that, and you're staying in that position. That's what that does on those two inward and outward cycles. That's probably the easiest way to explain it. What I wanted to make note to you was, what they say they do is when they're moving outward, they tilt it that way, right, so the spiral is going that way. And then the next time they come to do the same thing, they tip it with the Earth going in the other way, so it's spiraling that way when it goes out, not the other way. So they spiral it that way the first time they get to that point, and the next time they spiral it out that way. Now I know I've come back to a crop circle. I showed this in the last video. But I believe this has been left in this field by those that built the pyramids and tilt our planet and rotate it around the sun precisely, and I mean exactly, for the purpose of understanding these two cycles and the way they move from this inner ring here of rotation around the sun and the outer ring of rotation around the sun, and the 4 cycles that are done on the plane of the sun. Okay, that's exactly what this is doing. So when we're laid down, and we're laid down on the inner circle, so if we imagine we are now we're come to the end of our cycle, we're spinning in this direction around the sun. We're looking down on our solar system, going in this direction with a rotation like so. Okay, and when we come along here and they say, okay, well, we're going along here nice and merrily, and today is the day we've ended our 24,000 years in plane with the sun, doing what it is we're doing, and they now want to get us out to here. The day of reckoning is there. It's in plane with the vertical plane of the sun. There are two vertical planes of the sun, one that way and one that way. It is the vertical planes that they are trying to teach us about, how they affect us, how the horizontal plane of the sun affects us as well. So this is why they go through this process. When they tilt us off down like so, and they come along and lay us flat, that is where it happens. On this one here, they want to lay us flat to get us out to here. What I believe they are teaching us is when we're coming along in this direction, and we're going in so, our direction, well, I'm not saying the planet just goes out there, I'm saying what happens is the plane of the planet. So in other words, the plane that travels on, once they point the North Pole out that way, there is nothing holding us, technically. That's what they're teaching us, which is why on this other, the Egyptian relief, they say they have to come back to lift the globe up. It's because I would expect, with the spiralling like this and the North Pole heading outwards from the sun, that the planet does not come back. It actually just keeps going. And if not stopped, it would be a slow process, but it would be, it seems to me, that's what they're telling us. If it was laid out, it would just keep going. I also believe that when we're on the outer ring and we want to come back in, they're turning it back the other way. So in other words, they're pointing North Pole back in towards the sun and allowing this is what they're trying to teach us, how things happen here. Because what happens is when we lay flat the whole time, but laid flat, we do not get, our point of rotation changes. Now I've just brought up the gyroscope and zoomed in a little bit closer, just so we can get an understanding of what we're seeing happen. If this is where the Earth rotates on this ring here, right, it's being knocked off here, okay, knocked off where it was. On our cycle, that is what happens. It just comes around and does one loop, and in the middle, like I said, you've got a 24-degree axis tilt in this, but our point of rotation and return is the same, right? So in other words, the sun is here and we come back up to the plane of the sun in the same place. That is not what happens on these other cycles. What happens is it lays flat like this. If you can imagine, this still happens. It still only does a half loop cycle. The plane only can go half. But the plane here expands now because we're lying flat. The point that it rotates on is ever increasing in size until it gets to until they get to a point of where they're saying, well, this is where else you can rotate, and then it comes back and stands us up. Because that's what I'm seeing there. I'm seeing them divert us out, laying with the North Pole pointing away from the sun, and our planet keeps going out, and this is an ever increasing. So in other words, we still cycle the sun just the way we do. The plane still moves just the way it would, but the plane is ever expanding. So now if I come back to Google Earth, just to give you an indication of what's happening, the sun is still over here, right? It's still rotating around the sun, like going over there and coming back, but every year that it comes back to this particular point that it passed, it's further away. It's further away from the sun. And that's what you're seeing. And I'll show you now the Egyptian motif. Now I've just brought up that Egyptian motif again now, and this is the one that I said I believe is indicating of the cycles, the type of cycles we're having, and the installation of Atlantis at the end. The outer cycles, when you go out, you have a requirement to lift the globe because it's a flat cycle. They've started it off with the globe flat with a 24-degree tilt and wobble still on the axis, but it doesn't have the enough necessary tilt when, or, like I said, I would expect, it just cannot be picked up on its own, which is why they are indicating we have to come back and pick the globe up to initiate it. On an inner cycle, which is the one when you're coming back into the sun, they're having to do two things, which is lift the globe and install Atlantis. All right, and that is why we are getting this lesson. This is why we go off plane. I'll go back to these cycles. So then, in understanding and summarising the planet's motion, what they've just tried to tell us is when we are off plane with the sun, the rotating vertical plane of magnetism, two of them, that the sun has, if our north pole is pointed outwards, it will rotate, and the rotation or the plane of rotation increases. If we rotate with the north pole pointing in towards the sun, we rotate with a decreasing plane. And if we rotate with a north-south aspect like this, we remain stationary. That is the lesson. Now I've brought us back to the Egyptian parchment here just for a second, and just for confirmation of what we've just said. Without doubt, we've just seen one where we come back in, we're going to come and lift the globe up, and then we're going to install Atlantis. That is there, that's coming back here. Come out from the outer ring, back into the inner ring. I need Atlantis installed and I need the globe picked up. That happens there. We know we're not there because the globe is cycling the sun flat. We would definitely know if we had 3 months of darkness to, the tropics, which is what that does. So we are here on this parchment, and we've got 24,000 years of having Atlantis in place, which is why this rock. Well, now albeit it might be silly to come back to this rock again. Now, I have put this in a video. I won't do that in this video, but this was what happened. These marks were never on this rock, and we've gone through this before. These marks here, when I play the video, it comes up and has little UFOs and a space station and things happening here. That wouldn't need to happen at all if that wasn't going to happen. That's what they're doing. They're going to come and install Atlantis to stop the tidal waves. Now further to that, so if we come back to our temple in India then, and understand that what we're seeing is a completion of that cycle, and then the 24,000 years in line with Atlantis installed, and that is the cycle that comes after, and that is the one that shifts us out here, right? Now why I came back to the temple is for you to understand that this is the 12,000 year one that we've just finished. And note, if this is a clock face and we are looking at time, well then really we have travelled for 12,000 years in that time, but we're travelling for 24,000 years in that time, and there's not a lot of difference between there and there, is there? One thing we can be certain, the cycle that we have just finished, 3,000 years ago, or 4,000 to 5,000 years ago, we had 3 billion people on this planet that was reduced to 1.5. That is the cycle we have just finished, and that is by far better than any of these. Okay, this is the problem. So they wouldn't be here if they didn't have to be. So we're going into a very, very, very changing time here. And when I say changing time, that is a very appropriate term. Let's have a look at some numbers we got left. Now I have done a bit of calculus on the real value of these lines here in respect years in our part of the 48,000 year cycle. But before I move away from the temple here, I actually did want to mention one thing. And that is that in telling the story of, or my story, or what I've found, telling the story that I found to be the case here, I would see in this temple very much the same thing. I'm talking to, parts of the globe that already know exactly what I'm telling you is 100% truthful and tried to hide it from humanity for hundreds, if not thousands of years. I have the rest of the globe too interested in what's on TV tonight and what's on their mobile phones to give a hoot. So I end up talking to a little tiny band in the middle. So it's like actually one of these cycles is this story, because I'm trying to talk to a little tiny bunch of people in the middle. There are some amongst you that do watch things, maybe watching these videos, and may consider that I may be some sort of prophet or whatever. I can tell you, the blokes who do this had to come and do what I'm doing. I would expect that this sort of thing's happened if we've been supported by the people that have put this in the temple wall in India for 7 million years. This is what they say, and I believe them. There is nothing at any point with the technology of the people that are doing this. They do not need to leave a message on a rock anywhere, ever, if they were a danger to us. They just come down, bang. But so that's what I wanted to say. I just wanted to say that as far as prophet, being a prophet, look, I can tell you that everybody that would have done what I'm doing now would be doing it in exactly the same. A world as modern as ours, if not more. And I would expect, if he's being listened to by the same amount of people, they called them prophets because there is absolutely no profit in doing it. That's where that word comes from, I'm absolutely certain. I'll go back a little bit more seriously now. We'll have a look at the real numbers in here. Now I've brought this image back up. These were written in the sky. I'm under the belief that this was done in about 4 hours after I put a video up about inner and outer cycles of the planet around the sun. That this actually was painted in the sky over on the other side of the world. Really quite amazing when you think about it, but then they have actually drawn loop rocks, or loops on rocks and everything under the microscope, so anything seems to go these days. What I wanted to point out here, and it said at the time that in my last video, that this is telling us one way and the other what our real years are on the inner and outer ring, where it says 48,000 as the parchment, because we know that can't be the case. It's spinning probably 20 million miles further out around the sun. It's going to take the same amount of time. We are therefore being given a count. We see 4 this way because how many cycles are there? There are 4 unnatural cycles. So this is why I believe this is exactly what this is. This is saying on the outer cycle it's 53,443, and on the inner cycle it's the other way, which is 34,435. They are the figures, and they're written in the sky, so we know exactly what they are because there is no way of working it out. Now I've got some numbers written on the screen. It's not guesswork. We just got told the outer ring was 53,443 years. The inner ring was 34,435 years. We have to subtract 6,000 from both, and the reason we have to is because there are both have a 6,000 year manufactured unnatural cycle within the 42,000, right? Because we are saying 42 because we have 12 and we have 24 and we have 6. We don't count the other 6. It is in the transition, both in and outer ring, that those 6,000 years are spent. We won't worry about those because they will not be within this calculation. This will calculate the removal of 6,000 years from the 34,435 we had written in the sky by the very people that rotate our planet and wrote it in the sky for us to understand what's going on. If we take the 6,000 off, that's 28,435. That means the, you know, this is what it's saying. It's saying this, our 48,000 is not 48, it's 34. And that's what I'm saying, take 6 off, and then we're saying, okay, now we've got 28,435. If I measure the distances on the blue lines in the temple, they are 140 mil over 165 millimetre. We're looking at 165 being the longer one, which is our cycle. It ends up being 54% of the total distance, which in actual fact works out to be about 15,354 years. So that's the situation. We've got 15,354 years, which if you equate into hours, turns our day into about 13 hours long. And that is our problem on the plane we are going on. That is the issue. Our day and our planet rotates, and that is the problem. We have a rotation speed issue driven by a conjunction of both the magnetic vertical plane, 2 vertical planes, and the 1 horizontal magnetic plane cause an issue where the planet rotates to the point of that, and we have 13-hour days. 13-hour days. The problem is, I don't know how long it takes for that to initiate, whether that's a very, very quick process or not. Now I've come back to the temple. I'll just expand that out a little bit so you can understand what we're actually seeing now. Okay, because in respect time, we've now said, well, we're on this one, and we've now worked that out to be 15,000 years, a little over. I want you to take note of the outer one here. Look at that. That's even less again than the 12,000 one here. Why is it doing this? It's telling you that when you're in plane with the sun further out, the vertical planes of rotation of the sun, because we now are further away from the horizontal plane of the sun, can rotate the planet even quicker again. So we're being told here that this looks to me like it doesn't slow down. It's just a, you know, and what we've worked out, the 15,000 years here instead of 24, well, that's a mean average here. That's not what's going to happen. And I said our days are 13 hours long. They are 13 hours long if the speed is for the 20 or for the 15,000 years constant. It's not going to be. It's going to speed up. But that 15 hours or 13 hours a day is going to be 8 or 7 a day. That's where you get an ice age in this one as well as you get an ice age in that one. It's caused by the rotational speed of the planet being so quick that the atmosphere does not get time to turn, you know, to heat up. So we're actually heading to very, very dire times in respect even their management here, which is probably why they come and why they stay. We're really going to need some help to get through it and get educated on how best to deal with everything that's going to happen. That's like I said, this is once again, and this would also be correct in respect the Ice Age, because if we go back, we've just finished a 6,000 year cycle. There was 12,000 in plane with the sun prior, and then a 6,000 year out here. So all up, that's about 24,000 years, and our Ice Age would have ended in the end of this and part of this here. Okay, because this is the one that rotates the globe flat. Okay, and this one, like I said, that seems to have, you know, like I said, just what issues you have in this. I don't know why they don't say, oh, well, why don't we just spin it that way? Obviously, the globe slows. So it goes the opposite way, where you're leaving more and more and more darkness on the poles in these ones. And therefore you get an ice age that way. Obviously brought upon much quicker, I would expect, because it takes less time to do it, you know. Now we have already discussed the fact that we've been identified on the planet. We have a problem in both planes of the sun, whether we spin left or right, clockwise or anti-clockwise around the sun, we have an issue in speed of rotation. We either slow dramatically in one, which is that 12,000 years, the last cycle. This is why I think there was more I had to show, whoever it was I had to show, whoever it is listening, how the planet gets turned around, right? So in other words, we've seen that with the event that was the last one, so in other words, the last 6,000 unnatural cycle that we had just finished, this is our event, was the South American severing here, rotation once again, speeding the globe up. This one here, once again, speeding the globe up. And once again, the Mediterranean, creation of the Mediterranean, speeding the globe up. Albeit that was more the second event we've spoken of. We also then went to Tunguska and found that this event here was one that was used to slow the globe down. So in other words, we are now looking at impacts required to make sure these sequences happen, right? And to slow the process so that the planet, when it goes back into the unnatural cycles, does a 24-hour routine, 7-day a week, so on and so on. So that's actually why I'm saying this one here is coming from this angle to slow us down after a cycle like we're about to go on, where it speeds up. I want to show you one other thing. I believe they were actually wanting me to tell you this and why that big mark came up on the rock in the first instance, right? And it was to do with our own country here in Australia. And I've spoken to you about how our northern areas here were separated on this last incident. There have been 4 comets come in here. I will do an insert off a rock now. Now I've just flashed back to the top of the image. This image is obtained off the top of the rock. That's the Tin Tam rock that we started with in this presentation. And on that rock there's these 4 images, or these 4 points of contact here are in actual fact the 4 comets or asteroids that are created from the one that separates, tilts the axis, separates Antarctica from South America. It's that one that comes across and causes that. That one comes some 6 days earlier and lands in the middle of Western Australia on the very same line of longitude as, well, just below it. And had a point for me to come back and have a look at it. As in actual fact, the location of that made me understand how the Yunaguni monument and that and Wave Rock all fitted in together. Okay, now notice this big thing right there. I'll be honest with you, I can't say I've actually even noticed that big there before. But what I will do is we'll have a look at that, because that in natural fact is very close to where the next thing I wanted to discuss with you was. But it was more these, again, if I go back to Google Earth then and we look at the way Google Earth is on the map, and we see with Google Earth, it in actual fact has got these comets here. Right, oops, sorry, I'll go back to this one. The comets here, you can see them on the ocean floor. They are actually here. You can see where they slide in, hit the bottom, they jump across, bounce. These are the ones that separated all this landmass. Okay, but what I wanted to show you, this is the same here as well. These ones here created the east coast. They've come flying up this side from the south. This is what they wanted me to show you, I think. The position of the comets and where they slide them in. See, there's one slid right in here. It's still sitting at the bottom of the ocean. There's another one here. This one here is the one that clipped the top of New Zealand. Look, you can see where it's come in here. It's coming flying in here, all the way through here, all the way through there, and it's slid to a stop right there. We don't have continental shift, we have, or continental drift as they say. It's continental shove and continental push, and that's how that happens. And what I wanted to show you is why I think this is why we had the highlighter here right at the very beginning of this presentation. I'm going to try and make it go away. It may be that it's trying to show us Atlantis, or part of Atlantis, and I bring to your attention that structure there because it's underneath ocean floor, and it looks like something of logical placement to me. I don't know what it is. It looks like, you could say, oh well, it's scan lines from Google Earth or whatever. I don't know, to me it looks like it's logical placement. I've looked at that for a long time and often wondered why all these lines are on the bottom of the ocean for, you know. There is obviously a problem when we come back in plane with the sun, that there is volcanic activity, and it is very prominent. I also have made a statement before that I believe the tidal waves, when you hit the plane of the sun, like as in when you actually, the core of the planet, that's actually not the case. The core, the plane of the sun, the magnetic plane of the sun, the horizontal one, should drive tidal waves as soon as it gets to any ocean water from the top or the bottom, and we're coming up, so it's going to be the northern hemisphere that get wiped out with the waves first. I would expect it'll start, I'm not saying it's not going to cause problems down here, but as soon as it starts hitting the oceans up in the north, yeah, up here, here, we should start seeing, if we start seeing major volcanic activity here, I just hope they're coming down here very, very quickly. Also, what I wanted to show you was the one thing I think was why they want me to show you this, okay? And this was probably more to do with Australia, in that it was an event that was used to tilt the globe right over. Now if I measured this one here, see that line across here? That is in actual fact a path of a meteor that's come up from here. It's hit the bottom of the ocean here, come up here, gone bang like that, and that's how the ranges are created up here in Papua New Guinea. It's just gone straight in here and whacked straight up there, and you might think that's silly. That is exactly how, and that is known, it's a known fact that these are known, you know, people know this has happened. Look at this one here, this is even bigger. This creates the Himalayas. It comes flying in this way. Comes flying up here and it creates the Himalayas right here. That's how these things happened. It wasn't continental drift, it was continental shove. And this one here is coming this way and created the other side. You're seeing these done on the same line of longitude quite often. That's the other reason why I believe that's the case. You can see where that's come flying in there. It's amazing, isn't it? And look at this one here. So easy to see when you see where it's on the ocean floor. It's bounced off there, gone across here and gone bang, and pushed all the landmass there, and that's how that is there. That used to be in here. That's what used to be here. All this here used to be here. It wasn't drifting. It was done in a day. Now I've just brought us back to the rock just for a minute, because I had my son here the other day and he did say to me, Dad, he said, some of those lines look like they're on top of the rock, some of them look like they're, you know, that you can scrape them away. And he said, oh, can I get a nail and poke it in here and gouge this thing out of here? Look, I said to him, no, listen, I hope one day somebody in the world of geology will agree it's actually there. But what I wanted to show you a few things, because there was something I took a photo of some time back, and I pondered what it was when I saw it, and it was on this rock. I took this photo on the rock last year when I first became aware of this, albeit I think I've got a better one. But you can see this here. See how you get that? And I wondered how they make these lines go. How do they come? How do they go? How do they disappear? We've got the lines here, and like I said, this was, and I said to you before, depending on what angle you come in, keep your eye on that one, right? I'll show you that from that angle, and then I'll show you this next picture. Now, I've got that just as a slightly different angle. This is what I was telling you about. Look at where that image of Nibiru was, all right? Look at what it's turned into, just coming in from a slightly different angle. Can you see that? It's turned into a person standing there. You see what I mean? In actual fact, if you said what you think it looks like a person standing there with a person's, you know, person's head in their hand or something. I don't know, he's holding something. It just looks like somebody standing there, that's all. I'll show you from the other angle. Now I've got that another image up that I took just just slight change in angle, and that thing that you just saw looking like a person standing there, well, it doesn't look like a person standing there anymore, does it? It looks like Nibiru planet spinning, a red planet with another planet here spinning around the outside of it, with a planet in the middle. That's what I mean. And when I decided or said that Nibiru was being tracked at the pyramids, that just disappeared. So then I was wondering whether or not that image we're seeing, are they able to generate with that first image again? I'll have a look at that. Now I've got that image back now, and as you can see, I don't know, I'm just sitting here wondering if it is possible, and I know it sounds ridiculous, but microscopic holographic generation. Because if I show you that some of these images, if you look on these lines, they do look like they're actually not in the rock surface but above it. I'll show you what I mean. Now I've just brought these ones up, but this is an example, you know. These lines come up on this rock, it's just to the left of where we were looking at the rock. Those lines come up. So it was those bunch of lines, that's the remaining one there. Then when I worked out Nibiru was real, that round one disappeared off here. You can see that's where it was. This is one of them. And then that one stayed there, and then that one came up, which is a loop with a dot in the middle. And then when I realised that the Pacific Ocean needed to be crisscrossed, then that one disappeared. That's what's happened on this rock. It's been amazing. Now before I move back to the rock, because we'll go and check to see if the explanations that I've shown today have made that those marks disappear, as silly as that sounds. What I wanted to do now is this summary. A very quick summary of what it is we are now being told. We know if our Earth rotates like this, standing up with a 24-degree tilt on the axis, whether it is in plane with the Sun's plane of magnetic or horizontal plane of magnetic force, or it isn't and floating off willy-nilly, the axis stays where it is and its location relative to the Sun stays constant. It is when it lies flat and spirals out that it leaves, and I would expect see you later, as in bye-bye. When it spirals in, comes in, I would expect the very same thing. Just either go straight in and crash into the Sun. I could be wrong, I'm not a physics, you know, I haven't got a degree in physics. I'm not a person that works in, you know, the sciences of you know, planetary movement. I'm merely portraying what they say happens. So that's what they're saying happens. They are also saying that when we come back in line with the magnetic plane, horizontal plane of the Sun, which is very, very strong, that the both of them working together cause an issue where the rotational speed of the vertical planes of the Sun then can concentrate on the core of the planet because of the other horizontal plane, and then they can rotate the planet either that way or that way, depending on which way it's going. At the time that it actually hits the plane, it will either slow it and then the other way rotate it quicker. One would assume that that is saying if we left it that way, it would slow to a stop and turn around the other way and then just keep going absolutely flat out. That is what I'm thinking. There is no, you know, the end, which is why they do the movement at the, you know, in the instance when they tilt our axis. That's what I think happens. I think what happens is the Earth, if it's left on the plane of the Sun, it just speeds and speeds and speeds until the point it actually possibly is flung out of, maybe flung off altogether, that it actually will come about with the same thing that started. That in actual fact it just gets flung out of the solar system. Now we'll go back and have a look at our rock and see if we've got the lights there, or the little bright spots, eh? Now before I move away from this rock, I want to discuss one thing. We have on most of these rocks, I've got that under the microscope now, as you can still see, the bright mark is still there. And I'm wondering whether or not we're actually seeing a portrayal of a part of Atlantis is actually going down there, or it's already there. That may be what we're looking at. We could also be looking at the next event, that it's going to be on the same line of longitude, and they're going to tilt us out and put us back out again with the next event. That also could be what it's there for. But what I wanted to show you, one of the other things, when I came across here, and this was one where, I'll just refocus that, just bear with me a minute. Well, I've got that light a little better, it's not real good there, but it was just that one there where you could see this volcano here. Okay, I'll show you another one. Now I know that's a little bit glary, I have got a bit of light coming in the room, but once again we have, you know, a depiction of another volcano here. So now I'm back on that, I've just stopped this is just, well, I haven't stopped it, this is the 9 from 9 video that I had running. And there's my stick, my old broomstick coming in there. I've upgraded since then. Had a curtain rod. Once again, we've got a volcano in here. So the volcano thing is a very, very prominent thing, and I'm expecting that is very, very much an issue when we come back in plane with the sun, which brings me to the next point I wanted to make. So like I said, knowing that we've seen volcanoes on the rocks all the time, with them coming to put Atlantis in. Well, Atlantis is one thing, it controls the ocean, but obviously this magnetic, you know, the horizontal one of the plane causes major problems earthquake wise and whatnot. And I'm wondering whether or not in their placement of these land masses, you know, when they come in here and bounce this one over here and put a whacking great big mountain range here, and they come up here and do the same thing here, you know, whether it's a geotechnical requirement of the ley lines and the magnetic requirement of the earth or something of that nature. Like I said, I'm not a person trained in those sciences, but I'm seeing it would appear to me to be a building of mass in a given spot, ready for the next event or the next part of a rotation. So if the Earth spins really, really quickly and is allowed to happen, what happens to the land masses once that's happened beyond a given point? You know, I mean, what happens there? So if we're rotating very, very, very quickly, our land masses could obviously move away. It's what we're seeing happen here. So I don't know why they do it. There are things I don't understand, but I just wanted to make that point, so that it looks to me like they are placing these things relative to the magnetic ley lines of the planet for a purpose of the next event or the next thing that they have to manage in the management of our planet, which they obviously have done so for a long, long time. I would expect they're here now putting Atlantis in. I would expect that what we're seeing here is a depiction, like I said, of this crisscross across the Pacific Ocean, which is what needs to happen. And this is obviously, this is South America here, and we're flying out of here. These little UFOs come up here, the end of those vapor plumes, vapor trails or whatever. And this turns into a little, you know, and we've still got our 17 written on our rock as well today. So look, it's been really quite an amazing thing. I'll get you to note that see this guy's head here, see the shape of this head? I thought I'd bring it up on this picture, it's probably easier to show you what I was talking about. See this head here? See the shape of his face? Where have you seen that before? I'll show you somewhere else. Is not this image, that there, exactly the same as we've got on my microscopic rock? Exactly the same. That's who's building that. It's the same thing, printed from space. Now I just wanted to show you these. This is a hook or grappling hook. They actually were found in the shafts of the Great Pyramid, or in the Pyramid of Khafre. I would expect that they are an actual fact saying that that's actually upside down, it should be held the other way, that it's saying when we do these side ones of the 4 cycles, we always go that way once and that way the next time. You know, they always seemed at this point when they kick this off to do this transition out and in, both whether they're going out from there to back or from there back this way, it would appear to me that they always use the bottom of the planet to tilt it when they want to lay the axis flat. And I don't know why that is, but that seems to be what is in that message there. I wanted to bring your attention to this, which is a rock that was found in America. I did actually communicate with this guy and told him to put it under a microscope, and he'll probably find a few UFOs and whatnot on it. I would expect this to be built by the pyramid builders and people that tilt our planet. I would also expect that it possibly could be telling us here that when we come back in plane with the sun, the moon is going to go. If the moon is in there in the unnatural cycles to create the tidal flows, maybe leaving the moon where it is could complicate an already complicated issue. I just wanted to bring this image up as well. It is also a crop circle, which is identical to the rock, and I would expect, like I said, once we come back in plane with the sun, the moon would complicate an already complicated issue, and I would expect them to move the moon away. There has been a report of the moon moving further away from the sun within the past 6 months or so, or certainly since I've been making these videos. I would expect to see it would be depart entirely actually. So one final look back at the temple then, and we'll go from here back to the globe to understand all of the events that we've had from this point here. Okay, so we've come along and you've noticed our 24,000 years here is even shorter than the 12,000 in here, whereas ours is a little bit longer, but theirs is even shorter on this cycle here. So when we've moved further out from the magnetic plane of the sun, it would appear that in conjunction with the plane, we even accelerate even quicker again. But what I wanted to do is okay, we're going to be going very, very quickly here, and we need to be slowed down. We're going to be pushed in. We are going to be slowed here, right? And we're going to slow again here. And then we needed to be sped up again, because we're going to go fast here. So let's look at those events on Google Earth. We will first of all start with this one here, and what happens here, we've got to be tilted over and we've got to be slowed down. Okay, now if I go to the Google Earth and bring that up, we will look at our first location here. We've come really, really quickly. We want to slow down. This is our slow down. I would expect the Australian impact here be our tilt over, this one, the one that digs this out of here and creates Papua New Guinea. The whole mountain range there is all dug out of here and pushed this way. That is the event that tilts us over onto our side like that, and then when we come back in, we get the Tunguska event to stand us back up, okay, which is on the north side. So obviously if they are rotating this globe and it's rotating this way, sorry, I'll move it that way, so the sun is on my left, okay, they then come along here and let Tunguska go up like this. Now the reason why I would expect that too, remember we've still got a tilt on the globe here, and they will wait until this is at 24 degrees with its precessional period and then do the Tunguska event, and that is just enough to start it lifting on its own using that's why they come back and say we have to come back and lift the globe at that point. So they put the Tunguska event in at the same time that they install Atlantis for that previous 12,000 years. Then that finishes. It's going very slowly, so what do? They have to come on to do our event, which is the one we've just spoken of, which is coming in, clicking here and here, rotating the globe, rotating the globe faster again, and even rotating the globe even faster again with these ones. So that is what I think they are wanting me to show you in that respect. That does end that part of this video. Actually played this before, but I will allow it to play while I just chat and finish off. This is in actual fact the scene on the rock where we see, you know, like I said, a space station coming up here, and them saying they're coming out of South America by the look of it to do such a thing. Listen, the 17 is still there. I thought it was the 1st of the 7th. I still think it was the 1st of the 7th, and I still think they're here now already doing the work required. And I've shown you things in the sky that have been drawn in the sky after my last video went up, which is a really unusual thing to happen, but nonetheless it would appear to be that that's exactly what's happened. And it's an amazing thing to see here, you know, see this thing on this rock. I mean, we're looking at a very shape of this face is in the very same place here, not as you know, prominent because I'm zoomed in here and moving the light around, but it is really quite amazing. I might try and zoom in there a little bit more even. Hold on. Yeah, I thought I might just zoom right in just while it's moving around there and just see that you can have a closer look. I might just move back a little bit here so we can see it further back here where I was moving the light a bit more, and you can just watch what's going on. Listen, like I said, it's been a rather adventurous period of time this for me to go through all this. I feel like I'm, as I've already mentioned, a total waste of time in some instances, because I've had a total lack of people, like even from a geological sense, ringing back about what you're looking at now, and it's zero. And I have said before, it may be who I am and what I've attempted to do in many years, trying to have things resolved and that I considered were not satisfactory. And sometimes when you get to a situation where things are unsatisfactory, there's some people can walk away and say, well, you know, there's very little I can do about it. I had somebody long ago, before my mum was done away with, look down their nose at me one day and say, "You'll never change it, Brian, never." And I always find somebody telling me that I can't do something as a bit of a challenge. I always figure when you can, and when you've got something in your hand that you can make a difference with, you well, you should get off your backside and do what it is you can. I did what I did not for at any point for driven from spite or anger. It was only ever driven, and my whole thing, like for 18 years, was driven by the belief that I saw what was put in place in the family court and whatnot in respect for children and what all this sort of stuff. It's the last thing they've got is worrying about kids, and that's the reality. I find the whole process is there to actually put children in the wrong hands, and it's basically doing the thing that the Australian federal government, when they close the boys' homes and whatnot, I expect that's you know, that's the situation, that's actually what's happened. They created the family court so they could, you know, get their little boys and girls back that they got off the you know, off the boys' homes when they closed, and the convents closed. They never had any children anymore that they could get, so they then created the family court and decided to create a stolen generation in every nationality in the country, not just the Aboriginal people that were unlucky enough to be the forebears of their you know, their behaviour. Listen, it's been a difficult thing, a lot of that. There are things, I did say at one point in one of my videos, I went and lived in New Zealand for 6 years, so I did exactly that. I lived over there, and I've spent many years away from where my family lived. I'll be honest with you, I have had a lot of this come very close to me as well, which I have left out of the videos. I went to New Zealand for 6 years. I'll be honest, sometimes in my own life it would appear to be that I've been there for 666 years, because quite frankly there's some of the stuff that's come to light in last months and past months have been really quite confronting to deal with on a personal nature outside of all this stuff happening. So it has been pretty traumatic at times. And like I said, I'm at a point now where I sit here and say, well, I ponder a book, writing a book, when in reality you can't publish it. I mean, you can publish it, but how do you sell it when nobody wants to advertise? I'm telling you secrets that are on books in Masonic lodges in every country in the world. There's probably books in the Australian, in Sydney Uni, that would tell you exactly what I'm telling you here today about rotation of the planet. It's just put in a safe and locked under key. You know, it's just not told. It is not told because they have a perception of being able to, misguide us. And in that misguidance comes control, which is a pity, because I actually reckon that you would have far more control with people knowing. And I would also say that it's possible and conceivable that the very people that are doing this create the environment themselves. To be quite frank, I mean, they can, if they can send me a message and say, Brian, get the rock, if they're 7 million years they've supported human life on this planet, I'm pretty sure they know how a human brain works far better than we do, okay? So to the understanding of can they do such a thing? Can they implant a thought? I would expect they can, without doubt. The other thing I would like to bring up is that one of the other things we seem these 666 boys trying to push around now is our, RFID chips. Listen, lads, somebody's probably made you think of doing that. Who do you think it might be? And your reason why they made you think of it? Have you ever thought maybe you've already got one? Because I'm telling you, these boys could pick you as an individual out of 1 million or 1 billion twins, your twins, and they'll pick you out just like that in the flash of an eye. There's nowhere to hide and nowhere to run from these ladies and gentlemen that come and look after us. So they're coming down here to make sure the people that are on our planet, I would expect, once they've got this installed, are good people worthy of being here. And I have said before, I see it, some of the behaviour of things and roll in and out of our society may very well be designed by the very people that are coming here. They want to sort us out. Well, then you've got to put your sorting out in an environment, that tests the people. So that is something I would suggest you ponder. Okay, that's all for now. I'll leave you with it. Thanks very much. This is Brian Whitten and ET Art. Have a nice day. Thanks again.